Welcome back to the City Current Show. I'm your host, Jeremy Park. We're always honored to bring you inspiring stories of individuals and organizations making a difference and powering the good. And in this case, we're talking about the power of virtual assistants. We're honored to be joined by Dr. Bradley Cook. He's the founder of Career Up Now and Super Virtuals. How are you doing?
Oh, thanks so much for having me. Doing well. I mean, it's starting to look a lot like the holiday season, and can't wait for them coming up.
Absolutely. Well, let's dive into your world of virtual assistants and the power of helping nonprofits and businesses. But before we do that, give a little bit of your backstory in terms of how you got into this.
Yeah, for sure. So originally, I'm from Atlanta, Georgia. Don't hold it against me. And I've always been an individual that liked to create simple solutions for complex problems. And part of that is just identifying what are the challenges that nonprofits or businesses or others face, and how is it that we can solve that? So with the nonprofit that I founded, which is a national mentorship nonprofit, we had to be very lean at the beginning and always. And the challenge that causes nonprofits to increase their budget side and operations significantly is people. And always, you don't ever have enough money for programs, and to spend money on people when it's on the operational side kind of seems like a waste, but it's like a necessary evil. So I said, like, how might I apply best practices in hiring for talented, educated labor, but be able to keep it lean. And that's how I came across the virtual assistant space about 4.5 years ago.
You mentioned Career Up Now. Go ahead and add a little more context there, and then we'll switch over and dive into virtual assistants.
Yeah, sure. So I started actually Career Up Now when I was living in Israel, with the idea of a meaningful way to connect young adults to Israel is through their careers. Very soon after, I was approached by a nonprofit in the U.S. Indicating that a similar need was required here in the U.S. and asked if I could come over. So actually, took a job at a place called University of Florida's Hillel, and started to create a national program of creating communities of intention with emerging professionals and community and industry leaders, because so much of one's net worth is their network. And there's just amazing people out there that would never connect otherwise. And so it helps advance the careers of these young adults involved. It helps advance their life and spiritual meaning in their lives. And there's a real need for that nowadays, because so much of life can become mundane, especially in careers, and having a deeper meaning and purpose with ideas like gratitude or giving credit to others or those pieces enlighten.
Give us some backdrop on Super Virtuals.
Yeah, it's interesting because there's different ways that businesses come about. Sometimes businesses come about because like somebody's got to work. And another reason that businesses come about because there's like a significant need in a space and there's a blue ocean, like not many people are doing it. And some businesses come about just because people approach you and then you need to operationalize it because so many folks are like, hey, how do I do this? I was in the third category. So I was running I was running Career Up Now, and posting a lot on social media and doing videos to help other nonprofit professionals figure out how they could incorporate virtual assistants into their organizations, and just doing that because nobody was really talking about it at the time. And so people started approaching me and saying, hey, Brad, can you help us get virtual assistants in our company or in our organization or wherever? And I was like, yeah, sure, happy to do it. And I found myself spending more time eventually, like helping others do something that wasn't the mission of my nonprofit. And I said, like this is probably something that should be a business. As soon as I started helping for-profit companies like figure out their hiring strategies, I was like, so that's how it kind of came about. By necessity and by just bandwidth.
Give me an idea of where you start, and this can kind of help paint the picture of all the different opportunities. But when you're sitting down and you're looking at kind of the gaps, like, okay, here are the things that you need, here are the opportunities that exist, what are the questions you like to ask, what are you looking for as a starting place?
Yeah. So what I always recommend to people is to create a list of what they do or need to be done every day, every week, and then by simply identifying the items on that list, to then go through the list and on a scale of 1 to 3, one being I requires me to do it 100%. Second is that I can share it with others. And third is that I can completely delegate it. To go through that list, have a chart, and then all of a sudden you see what type of tasks someone's doing, like for example, I'm doing that I either don't want to do, don't like doing, don't know how to do. And it's different for everyone. So, for example, some people really like being active on social media and posting and doing those things, which is an important thing for so many businesses and nonprofits and everyone nowadays that needs to put themselves out there. But they don't even know how to use like their camera or to write a quality post. And so then all of a sudden, that's something that is like a number three. Like they don't have any interest in doing it. It needs to be done and it can be fully delegated. Um, and sometimes it's just like bookkeeping or other aspects that are part of a business and everyday life, email handling, calendaring. And so by going through grocery shopping, like some people really don't like grocery shopping. And even though that's not a part of your business, it's something that pulls you away and that has to be done regularly. Unfortunately, it doesn't work for carpooling, but having those, that's where I always suggest to start. It's like taking an inventory.
And I like the fact that you point out this is for businesses, nonprofits can really leverage this. And even like you mentioned on the grocery shopping, when you look at being able to place an order online and then having it delivered to your house, well, that can be done by a virtual assistant. And so there's plenty of opportunities to engage this at all levels. And when you look at even listing out above and beyond what you mentioned, conducting donor research, streamlining operations, managing CRMs, coordinating events, the social media content, like you mentioned before, plenty of different opportunities to leverage. And so talk about then that next step of figuring out, okay, we've done our list, we've figured out 1, 2, 3, the things that we can delegate. Now let's figure out how do we actually put this in motion, because that's a whole nother art form in and of itself. So talk about kind of those next steps of putting it in motion.
So this is where it's daunting and challenging and where most individuals fail and give up. So once that list is created and identified, it takes quality individuals that are trustworthy and motivated to help fill in those aspects. And it's challenging to hire, period, when you're face to face with someone. It's even a little bit harder when someone's remote and there's not the opportunity to supervise them. And then the area that's probably the most challenging is if they're remote and they're not stateside. Maybe English isn't their first language. And all of a sudden there's the language barrier, there's not the ability to monitor in the same way, and it's like a lot of work. So one has to decide where they feel most comfortable in that spectrum. Part of the way to determine like how one feels most comfortable in that spectrum is the amount of money someone has. So the further you push yourself over, the less expensive. So if you're outsourcing to someone that's in a foreign country whose native language may not be English, like the cost drastically decreases, but one has to be prepared to find the people, like to interview them, to provide that, to like have that perfect match for the company or for the nonprofit, which is challenging. So like I myself, I have my doctorate in education and assessment. So what I did was I created like a series of 7 different measures to identify if someone is that far on the remote side, whether or not they would be a good fit for an organization. So it provides them a score, it takes personality assessments, and then all of a sudden you'll end up with 100 applicants for a job. Because on that side of the spectrum, you'll have a lot more applicants because of seeking economic opportunity. And then it's to be able to like go through it. So it's sometimes throwing a bunch of like resumes against the wall and hoping one sticks is okay, maybe at the beginning, because it's okay to be burned. But once an organization starts increasing their staff of remote help, it becomes more and more important to approach it in a critical and thoughtful manner.
Give us an idea of kind of success stories, if you will, or just stories in general that kind of paint the picture of the ability to leverage this and, both from a cost saving for nonprofits, but an effective measure of being able to drive an ROI.
Yeah, so I'll give an extreme example that really I'm proud of with Super Virtual is what we were able to do. So one of my friends that I grew up with in high school and beyond started a summer camp. And her summer camp was very poorly run on the operational side. She was an excellent fundraiser. She was a great executive director, but her CFO was horrible. Her operations director was awful. And so she was able to work with us and find an individual who's incredibly talented at both operations and on the financial side for about $10 an hour. And he completely came in, remedied the problems, and then for the first time in 3 years, she was able to go on a vacation with her family, and she was ready to quit before that. I think another great example, so that's on the operations side. Another great example on like the donor research side, let's say, there was an Israel organization, like a campus-based organization here in the U.S. that had over 20,000 lines of data on the individuals that had given to them and the students that have been involved over the past 10 years. And they just had basic information, and they needed each of those lines to have like the Facebook link, the LinkedIn page, like what their philanthropic capacity to give was, like where they are in school, like what their position is, what school they went to, what chapter they're part of. Literally would have taken them a year to be able to get it done. And we were able, with the virtual assistants who just focus on that, they were able to get it done within a week and a half. At significantly less than $10,000 or $15,000 that were quoted to them in the longer time frame. So those are two like really good examples of how that applied on like the operations and then also data management side.
Carry that into, when you look at what the pandemic has created in terms of opportunities with remote workforces, both with companies and nonprofits feeling more comfortable with teams and employees working remotely. And I think that opens the door when you talk about virtual assistants to be more mindful of the opportunity and be more embracing of it. And on the flip side, the talent, as you mentioned, that has these skill sets that can be accessed from anywhere in the world, much more now technology, savvy, much more willing to work from home from anywhere. So I think on both sides, it's kind of ripe for opportunity. Is that what you're seeing play out? Is the future of this?
Yeah, so I'm seeing the newest cutting edge trend that I'm seeing. I'm definitely seeing what you're seeing, but something that's on a cutting edge side of this element is you want you and your people to be working on your business, and you want remote help to be working in your business, because we each have our superpower and our strengths. And if we're able to outsource, let's say, the items that are taking us away from being in our state of flow to accomplish our mission or the company's purpose, or like meeting with clients or whatever the case may be, the thing that like we're really passionate about, then we're able to do so much more and in a much shorter period of time than otherwise. So that's really where we see things going and amplifying current staff and workforce and individuals themselves. And of course, at a smaller end, like there's closer towards like there's also the opportunities, of course, to hire people and place people that are doing sole jobs. But I think the biggest opportunity is amplifying the workforce that's currently extant.
Do you recommend organizations start with like a project and use a virtual assistant to kind of test the waters for those who, want to get into it but don't exactly know where to start? They've listed off and they've got their starting points, but kind of dipping their feet in the water, or looking at it as a long-term, more, working in the business as a regular foothold. Where is a good starting point? And obviously it might vary for organizations, but what's your thought on that?
Yeah, so if you're just briefly, it depends on one's personality, right? So if someone has a specific project that they need done, then that's a great place to start. Like something that's not an individual strength, they want to see how it goes. Excellent. But then there's these like people that are ADHD or like scattered, but really smart business minds, but having trouble. So they just need to be able to delegate out their busy work, like email handling. Like some people, it takes 10 minutes just to book an appointment, whereas it would take a virtual assistant like 30 seconds. So those are two sides, and one really needs to know themselves and their needs, and based upon that, to make the decision on one of those two sides.
So where do we start in terms of linking in with you and looking at all this as an opportunity for nonprofits and businesses? So where do we go? How do we carry this conversation forward?
Excellent. Yeah. So appreciate you asking that. Supervirtuals.com is our website. I'm also Bradley Caro Cook on social media, LinkedIn, Facebook. I'm always accessible and very happy and eager to help and have conversations and answer questions. But if you're just ready to like dive in, go to supervirtuals.com and you'll be able to tell us what you're looking for. We line up about 5 candidates for an interview and do group interview based upon what you want. They're college educated, they're incredibly talented, and then and you decide in a group interview like which one's best. So it moves forward very fast, and we have a ton of 5-star Google reviews with our unique process. So very proud of that.
Yeah, very cool indeed. Well, Dr. Bradley Cook, thank you for all you do. Thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me. Stay safe, be well.